All right, shalom. It's kind of loud, but that's all we can do, I guess. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how to grow spiritually and never fall. So, how to grow spiritually and never fall. And I thought it would be a good lesson because we have people who just got immersed. We had quite a few people who just got immersed. And also, just I've been talking to different people, and they've been talking about wanting to grow spiritually and wondering how they would go about that. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today: how to grow spiritually and never fall. So the first scripture, let's look at what our master said. It says, and Yeshua said to them, no man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of Elohim. So this was kind of interesting to me because I didn't grow up on a farm. I don't really know too much. You guys, let's keep it down just a little bit. So I never grew up on a farm. I'm a city girl, so I don't really know anything about farm life. But one of the things that I read was that when you're trying to plow straight rows, if you turn your head either to either side or back, the way that you're holding the plow or whatever turns slightly. It kind of turns with your head and you can't really control it. So when you're plowing furrows, you have to keep looking straight or you'll go into the next row. Eventually, if you keep on going, you're off track enough where you're going to go into the next row. So Yeshua said that anyone who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is not fit for the kingdom of Elohim. So when I'm looking at this, the things that would take our mind off of looking straight forward at Messiah, looking straight forward at Yeshua, would be distractions that might be around us. So we have to be wholehearted. And, when we say we believe in Yeshua, when we repent, when we're immersed in his name for the remission of sin, when we receive that Ruach, we have to do so with a sense of wholehearted steadfastness. So we switch our focus from being on ourselves, worldly pursuits, anything that we was going after, that automatically switches, and now we are focused on the Most High. So the keys to growing spiritually and never falling, they're rooted in the strength of your loving commitment to Yah. Is rooted in being a consistent follower of his word, his will, and his way, not just when it's convenient for us, but even when it's difficult. And it involves allowing Yah to take the taste out of your mouth for sin and carnality. And so it involves you actually completely crossing over from darkness into light. But the thing is that even when we've done all these three things, we are just at the brink of what it takes to grow spiritually and never fall. See, sometimes people think that all these things is enough. If I do these three things, then I'm cool and I'm going to grow spiritually and I'm going to never fall. But the scripture teaches us that this is just the beginning. Hiskey, can you turn that down just like a couple notches? So where am I coming from by saying that those three things is just the brink of never falling and of growing spiritually? When we look at 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 5, this Giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. For if these things be in you and abound, they make you that ye shall neither be barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of our Master Yahshua HaMashiach. But he that lacketh these things is blind and cannot see afar off, and hath forgotten that he was purged from his old sins. Wherefore, the rather, brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure. For if ye do these things, you shall never fall. For so an entrance shall be ministered unto you abundantly into the everlasting kingdom of our Master and Savior, Yahshua HaMashiach. So this is going to be the verses that we look at today. So Peter instructs us that in order to grow spiritually, he says, if these things be in you and abound, they make you neither barren nor unfruitful. So if we're talking about growth, we're talking, and barrenness is the opposite of growth. Barrenness is if you see a tree that's barren, it's dead. But if you see a tree that's fruitful, it's alive, right? And so having these things, if these things are in you and abound, they make you that you shall neither be barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of Yahshua. But he also says this, he says, give diligence to make your calling and election sure, for if you do these things, these same things, ye shall never fall. So the key to growing spiritually and never falling, according to Peter, is given to us right here. So just to get Monet connected, what I was saying is that when we look at these things here, these keys to spiritual growth, which is rooted in the strength of your loving commitment to the Most High, being a consistent follower of his will, his word, his way, and getting the taste out of your mouth for sin and carnality, and crossing over from darkness to light, that this is just the beginning of growing spiritually. But we need to add these things. So now we're going to talk about what we need to add, okay? But first, we're going to talk about giving all diligence, giving all diligence. So the word for diligence here in the Greek is to aim or endeavor or make an effort or exert oneself or zeal. So basically, it means it's the opposite of to delay. But the Hebrew equivalent word is Echad, which means to be awake. And it describes someone who is set to do something. So when we're looking at our soul, we need to be extremely diligent and intentional about our soul. But if you look at the world, and pretty much every single person that we know, their soul is on the back burner. On the front is, I got to go to work. I got to make money. I got to have a house. I got to have a car. I got to take care of my kids. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. I got to do that. And guess what? All that stuff fades away eventually. Your kids grow up, your house, something might happen to it, whatever. Your car breaks down. Your job lays you off. All these things are temporary things, but our soul is something that we should be the most diligent and intentional about. And so we should actually aim and endeavor and exert ourselves for the sake of our soul. But if you look at the Hebrew word to be awake, if somebody's asleep, how can you don't even know what's going on around you when you're asleep? I know I don't. I know some people sleep real light, but when I'm asleep, stuff could really happen and I don't even know what happened because I was asleep. How about being unconscious? I was unconscious recently, where 1 minute I was standing up and the next minute I was on the floor. I had absolutely no idea what happened to me in that moment of time. I didn't even know how many moments it was. So the goal of the God of this world, Hasatan, is to keep us asleep. It's to, you know that what was that on like the waves where they got into that little party thing, and it was like they was kind of like dancing and they was changing the lights, and then like all this time went by. What was? Yeah. That is the part. That is the part, isn't it? No. But it was like change the lights, right?
No, that's when they were talking about Oz. You never going to see the wizard. She's talking about the part where it was like a strip club place. And there was flowers everywhere.
Oh, is that a different one? Okay, all right. Well, I didn't. That really
You guys should know this movie better than me.
Okay, all right. You guys get the point, though, right? I actually like that scene that your mom said better. Anyway, I like that scene better. But anyway, you get the point that we get into this whole matrix system where all these things are around us that we're giving diligence to, but then when it comes to our soul, now that's something that's on the back burner. But Peter says that if you want to grow spiritually and never fall, you will give diligence to your soul. But he says here, add. Now, when I was looking at this Greek word, I don't really know Greek too much. That's why I didn't even put the word up here. If you guys have the Blue Letter Bible, you'll be able to find the Greek word for add. But when I was looking at the Greek word for add, it said to richly supply or to supplement or to lavish into. And so when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about like just slavering something to it. Or injecting it, because there's like an into type of a thing, not just on top of the surface, but to like inject it into something like a syringe type thing. So when we're talking about adding, it's not just like putting an extra $1 on, but it's like putting an extra $100 on or something like that. But it says to add to your faith. So when we was talking about those basic things in that other slide, those 3 basic things, those could be attributed to your faith. So we was looking at this before, and we were saying that a moon means faithful trusting. That's faith. But the Hebraic concept of faith, it's not like a mental belief. It's like I'm sitting in this chair right now because I trust this chair is going to hold me up. It's like I just ate all that food over there because I trust that it's healthy and it's not going to make me sick. If I see some food and it looks like it's rotting, I'm not going to trust it. I'm not going to eat it. But that food over there looked good, so I ate it. So I trusted that it was going to be okay for me. If I get in my car and I drive home, I have faith that it's not going to overheat and die on me. You know what I mean? So because I have faith in that, that's why I get in and I turn it on and I go somewhere, right? If we're going out of the state, I'm not going to take a broken down car because I don't really trust in it, right? So a moon, which is faith, it implies in the Hebrew concept, it implies that action follows. It's not like I just mentally believe in the Most High and okay, yeah, my life is compartmentalized. And so I have this Most High part here and then I have this me part over here. If I actually believe that he's like my creator and that, the beginning of wisdom is the fear of Elohim or whatever, then I'm actually going to line my whole life up with him. You can read the whole thing, right? A moon, right? A moon. And the root of a moon is aman, which means firmness. It means support, stability, like a baby will find. So you can, yeah. So the question is, what's our foundation? What's our foundation? Is it rooted? So this is, if we're building something here, the faith is really the foundation, right? It has to be rooted in faith and firmness. And the root word aman is also the root word for the Hebrew word truth. So truth and faith are connected because they both need to be firm. So it's like if you have faith in something, you believe it to be true so much so that you're willing to give your life for it almost. You know what I mean? Like you're willing to be like, all right, I believe this is going to happen, so I'll put all my life savings down on it or something like that. So anyway, the foundation has to be Yahshua. It has to be Mashiach because we have foundations. People have all kinds of foundations. Some people have foundations of like, I don't even know. It's like, it doesn't even make any sense. But if you look at if your foundation is the Messiah, then, That's a strong foundation. It says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and does them shall be like the wise man who built his house on the rock, and the rain came down and the floods came and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. So we're talking about not falling, right? We're talking about not falling. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them shall be like the foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain came down and the floods came and the winds blew and they beat on the house and it fell, and great was its fall. So when we're talking about this building and growth and spiritual growth, the foundation has to be on Messiah. Virtue. The Greek word here means valor, excellence, uprightness, and splendor. And each of these words actually has a Hebrew equivalent word. However, the word that I was looking at, since we're talking about women here, is the woman of Proverbs in Proverbs 31. And so what kind of characteristics would anyone have to say that might fall into these categories? Like, what did she do? Proverbs 31, she was virtuous. When that word virtuous is chayil, which it's a valor, valiance, right? It says an excellent wife who can find, an excellent woman. It says that she strengthens her arms, and it says that that splendor, she says that she's clothed in splendor. So when we look at the woman of Proverbs, which is the woman that, you know, everybody looks up to, what we're supposed to look up to as well, she is full of virtue. So we have faith, and we're going to diligently inject virtue into our faith. So it's not enough to just have that faith and that foundation. Now we need to inject that thing and fortify it with uprightness and splendor and valor and excellence. Knowledge. The Hebrew word for this form of knowledge is da'at. Oh, you don't know the tab word. Da'at. We're talking about knowledge right now, da'at, which implies intimate knowledge of Yah. So there's such a thing as a worldly knowledge. Like, there's a lot of people who are real knowledgeable about street things. I was never one of those people. Like, I just never was. Like, people talk to me and I'm like, I don't even understand that. But this type of knowledge, da'at, is the knowledge of Yah. And knowledge has a building power. So when we look at Proverbs 24, verses 3-4, it says, through wisdom a house is builded, and by understanding it is established. And by knowledge, or da'at, shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. So knowledge is built by, the house is built. We're talking about building, right? We're talking about building our faith and building ourselves to a point where we won't fall. And so we can see how knowledge ties into that. But I'm going to keep going because there's more I can say about that, but I'm just going to keep this rolling here. Okay, let's look at temperance. So it says, and to temperance, or into knowledge, add temperance. And the word temperance here, it means self-control. And so we talked about self-control at length, about how self-control requires strength. It requires might. When we think about Yah, he's like all powerful. And so for him to even interact with us, he actually has to temper himself in order to interact with us. It's almost like if you have something, if you have some boiling hot water and you want to drink it, you'll add a little bit of cold water too to try to bring it down. So Yah, he actually has to hold himself back in order to interact with us. And so when we're looking at ourselves, self-control is, now I want something, even if I want it in my flesh, but I know I have knowledge of Yah now, right? So now that I have knowledge of Yah and what he likes and what he doesn't like, now I'm going to actually control myself to do what I know lines up with that knowledge. And so self-control is now you've gotten a conviction in you. Like you did something, you got convicted about it. So temperance is you actually following after that conviction that you have. So this word patience should be translated endurance in our thoughts. We're adding to temperance endurance. We're adding to self-control. We're adding to self-control endurance. So sometimes our diligence, so we were talking about that we're supposed to be diligently doing these things, right? We're supposed to diligently be adding to our faith. And so if we started out and our diligence starts to wear out over time, what's going to happen to us? Like if our diligence wears out, we're going to give up, right? So when we have this combination of diligence and endurance, what happens is that self-control, remember we said that temperance was self-control. So self-control kicks in to help us to keep going. So sometimes we might want to give up, but that's when that temperance kicks in that leads to endurance. So like if you want to give up, let's just say you want to give up, not you, but anyone. Let's just say someone wants to give up. They say, I'm done, I want to give up. That's when your self-control kicks in and says, no, you're not going to get up. You're not going to give up. You're going to keep going. I know in your flesh you want to give up, but your self-control says, I'm going to hold myself back and allow Yah to lead, and I'm going to keep going. Does that make any sense? Where it says like we're perplexed but not. Yep. Yeah. Yep. That's what I lean on. Yeah. You gotta be crushed. You're not going to be destroyed. You're able to keep moving on. But endurance is required. Yeshua said, but he that shall endure until the end, the same shall be saved. So you have to actually endure until the end. And then in Hebrews 12, this is the one I was talking about, Monica. It says, wherefore seeing we are also compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that doth so easily beset us. And let us run with patience. This word patience is endurance, the same word. Endurance, the race that is set before us, looking unto Yeshua, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of Elohim. So when you have these things that you were saying, things that could come up and kind of knock you off or whatever, knock you off of the thing. That's when if you see it coming, then you need to prepare for it. You know what I mean? Like, that when you see it coming, like for example, my husband's a construction worker. So I already know he's going to get laid off. When the job is over, it's over. There's nothing that we already know this is going to happen. So what we have to do is we have to save them. You know what I mean? Because we know that there's either going to be a feast or there's going to be a famine. And so we save in the feast time for the famine. So when we have something that we know of, like there's a sin that so easily besets us, or there's a weight, that we already know is there, then we have to make provision to set that thing aside. Go ask Africa. Thank you. Then we have to make provision to set that thing aside. Why? Because if you don't, it's something that's going to weigh you down. I think about like clothes on a runner. Like they purposefully wear stuff that is lightweight, or what is it? Air, like, you know, where like the wind, like on an airplane, what is it? Aerodynamic. Yeah, right. They purposefully wear stuff. Like they're not gonna wear pads, like, you know, like football player pads and a helmet and stuff, because that's gonna slow them down. So when you have these weights on you, if you keep them, they're gonna weigh you down. Now they might not slow you all the way down to a screeching halt, but they're gonna hinder your spiritual growth, right? Your spiritual growth is gonna be hindered. So that's why you gotta lay it aside. And you gotta realize that if you know that somebody is gonna start, if you already know that every year this person comes and asks you for this thing or whatever, then you just gotta start preparing yourself for how you're gonna respond to it, how you're gonna react to it. And if people are constantly hurting you, let's just say, like you feel offended that somebody's, you know, doing something in your face right down the street or whatever, you know what I mean? You have to learn how to pray and how to cope with that thing so that it doesn't turn into bitterness, right? And resentment, because that's the next step. Is that the next step? No, that's 2 steps from now. We'll be talking about bitterness and resentment. But we add to patience or to endurance, godliness or holiness. And so the step that you guys took of getting immersed and stuff, that was your justification. That was your justification. So what happens when you get justified is you get declared right. So you get declared right because Yeshua declares you right. So that don't mean, that's almost like if you're guilty of something and the judge says you're not guilty, or maybe not even you're not guilty, but we're not going to treat you like you're guilty. We're going to release you. You know what I mean? Cover you. We're going to, you know, if you have a fine that you got to pay, we're going to pay your fine. We're going to atone for you. That's what Yeshua gives to us. That's what he offers to us. I just saw Micah, I think, go out there. So I'm trying to get my thought back. I saw the baby get that. Righteous, accordingly. And that's called sanctification. That's called sanctification. So that's called holiness or godliness or set apartness. Sanctification is that Yeshua gives us a clean dress, white dress. Now what we have to do is try to maintain that clean dress. Make sure it doesn't get any spots in it. Make sure it don't get any wrinkles in it. Make sure it don't get any blemishes in it. If it does, come back to him so that he can cleanse it. You know, if we fall short and we sin, come back and repent.
Like our heavenly Taylor.
Yeah, exactly. And so he gives us this thing. And so, but it also says, follow peace with all men and holiness. This is the sanctification, without which no man shall see the master. And so it's important that we can't just be justified, but now we also have to walk in our sanctification. So I'm combining the last 2 things he says. He says, into godliness, brotherly kindness, into brotherly kindness, charity. So I'm combining these 2 things because in the Hebrew, these concepts are the same. In the Greek, there's 2 words where brotherly kindness is like phileo and charity is agape. And both of them mean love, but the first one relates to love from one person to another person. And the second word, charity, relates love as in Yah's love for us. But in the Hebrew, it's all the same concept. Love is love in the Hebrew because just like we said, love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might, and love your neighbor as yourself. For Yeshua, he just said love. You know what I mean? So if you're going to have brotherly love, then you have to have love towards Yah. And if you're going to have love towards Yah, then you also need to have brotherly love. So I'm saying all this stuff and I'm not. So it's impossible to have the one without the other. So when we love, but I would say that the greater love is that last one, charity or agape, because when I love somebody from a perspective that they're just a human being and they're just like me, imperfect, then I'm going to give them a lot more of a leeway, quote unquote, before it like turns into something else. You know what I mean? Like if you look at somebody like the way that the Father looks at them, how did he love the world? He said, for Yahweh so loved the world, he sent his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him. But it was before we actually believed. So he loved us when we was in a state that was against him. You know what I mean? So if we can love somebody like that, then it helps us to not have bitterness, anger, and fits of rage against people.
And that's my prayer, that I see y'all people the way
He sees them, yeah.
will make interactions so much easier.
I mean,
Instead of looking at them from the point of view of, oh, he or she wronged me.
yeah.
This is how I'm seeing you, how I'm thinking. And looking at those from y'all's perspective, like I'm gonna love you regardless.
I'm gonna love you regardless. You don't even have to deal with them every day. But you don't have to have that bitterness. You don't have to have hatred. And when you see them, it destroys you, yeah. And it hinders your spiritual growth.
Like friends, when they friends, you are putting them from like, all we have right now is now.
Yeah.
Now. So when you're living in that bitterness, anger, whatever, you're not focusing on the now. You're losing sight of.
You're kind of looking at the past, at what this person did to you, and all these different things. And it's also rooted in your own pride, because now you're like, do you know who I am? That you did such an, I did that to, you know how many people I said that to? Do you know who you're talking to? Oh, so funny. You're idolizing, yeah, us idolizing myself. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And you just said like
looking back, that is looking back. If I keep a record of every single thing that everybody does to me in my mind, that's me just constantly looking back. And then if I go over that list over and over again to remind myself so I don't forget, like the things that people have done to me. You guys, y'all getting too loud.
It's almost like turning into a pure soul and then going back to human form.
Yeah.
You're going back to 22, like constantly, and you're going back.
I mean, you keep on going. If you keep repeating that list in your mind, you know what I mean? And then the crazy thing is that if you don't keep repeating the list, a lot of times you'll forget what somebody did to you. But then you'll be like, I don't know. I can't remember what that person did to me, but I know I'm mad at them. That's all I need to know. Like, you know what I mean? But that's if you don't keep repeating the list, but you still have that list in your mind.
like, oh yeah.
And then they get mad again. And then they get mad again because you reminded them of it. Yeah. I want to talk about making our calling, because it says here, give diligence to make your calling and election sure. For if ye do these things, ye shall never fall. So I want to talk about this just real quick. And I think that this is almost the end of it. But we have to realize. Hold on a second. Hey, you guys, can y'all just take it down a couple levels. Okay, so we have to realize that we was created to build. So when we're talking about diligence here, and this isn't about us just resting and allowing Yah to do everything for us. That's why I want to talk about justification and sanctification. Justification really is allowing, quote unquote, allowing Yah to do everything for you, because he is justifying us back to the Father. You understand? So that's something we can't do. No matter how much righteousness we have, there was like a thing where somebody was like, I'm going to work my way into the kingdom. So they was like, I'm going to do all of this stuff. So then it was like, okay, well, what did you do? Well, I saved somebody's life out of a fire. Okay, that's 1 point. Okay, I did this, I did that. There was like, okay, that's 2 points, that's 3 points. Well, how many points do I need? You need 1,000,000 points. So all the righteousness that we can have is like nothing compared to what we quote unquote need to get into the kingdom of heaven, right? So justification is something that he does for us, but once we've been justified, now we have work to do. We have some plows and we have some furrows to dig and we have some actual building to do. So it's not time for us to sleep. It's time for us to wake up and get to work, right? And to get the purpose that he has for us accomplished. So when we're looking at the calling and the election, this is the same concept what Yeshua said when he said, many are called, but few are chosen. These are the exact same words that's used in that verse. And I'm not going to read all of this, but, well, I guess I can. I'll just read it because, But it says in Matthew 22, it says, and Yeshua answered and spake unto them again by parables and said, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a certain king, which made a marriage for his son, and sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding, and they would not come. Again, he sent forth other servants, saying, tell them which are bidden, behold, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen and my fatlings are killed, and all things are ready. Come into the marriage. But they made light of it and went their ways, one to his farm, the other to his merchandise. And the remnant took his servants and entreated them spitefully and slew them. But when the king heard thereof, he was angry, and he sent forth his armies and destroyed those murderers and burned up their cities. Then saith he to his servants, a wedding is ready, but they which were bidden were not worthy. Go ye therefore unto the highways, and as many as ye shall find, bid to the marriage. So those servants went out into the highways and gathered together as many as they found, both bad and good. And the wedding was furnished with guests. And when the king came in to see the guests, he saw a man which had not on a wedding garment. And he said unto him, friend, how camest thou in hither not having a wedding garment? And he was speechless. He didn't have an answer. Then said the king to the servants, bind him hand and foot and take him away and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen. So this is interesting because he's calling all these people. So this is like him extending his grace and his favor, and people aren't doing their part of receiving it, So that's justification. I'm sending you out an invitation. You take the invitation. But the sanctification part here is kind of hard to see a little bit. But when you see, it says here that he went out and he got the good and the bad, and they came, right? And then he goes and he sees there's a person who don't have a wedding garment on. He's like, you came to the king's house. Where's your wedding garment? So something that I learned when Tony was doing this message of this verse here was that the king, if you looked at the history, the king gave, whenever he sent out an invitation, he also gave you the clothes to put on to come to the wedding. So you got the clothes. Why aren't you wearing the clothes? That's right? And so he's like, because you might say, well, he just got them from the street. Like, he just got somebody from the street. Like, they just came in the clothes they had on. No, he gave them the clothes to wear to the wedding.
That's our white garment.
That's our white garment. He's like, where's your white garment at? You don't have it? Okay, you're not fit for the kingdom. You're out.
Reading this scripture before, I never seen it that way.
Yep. So when it says here, many are called, that calling went out to everybody. And then there was some who, that's justification. There were some who accepted it. Then now some people accepted that justification, but they never walked out the sanctification part. And they are not fit for the kingdom, right? And so They came to the wedding and it was like, you're out of place, right? So when Yah calls us, he gives us his knowledge. This is his garments. We're talking about, we got called to the wedding, right? He gives us his da'at, he gives us his knowledge, he gives us his ruach, he gives us his plow, right? And so we have to start walking in that knowledge. We have to start walking in that ruach. And when we are doing his work, we can't look back. Now we do all of these things, right? If we start with this foundation of faith and then we inject this foundation of faith, and then we inject virtue, we inject knowledge, we inject self-control, we inject endurance, we inject holiness, or that sanctification part, right? And then we also inject love. There's nothing that can stop you from growing spiritually. There's nothing that can stop you from growing in relationship with the Most High and also making it to the end. So if you want this is what you're going to do. And that's what Peter, I think that's the last slide. Yeah. That's what I'll put it back up. Yep. That's the last one. So that's what Peter is telling us that we need to do. If you do all these things, he said that you'll neither be barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of Messiah, and that you will never fall. And so this is like really a message for people who just get immersed to know how to start your walk. Because, you know what I mean? Like you might say, oh, I need to learn Hebrew, or oh, I need to learn history, or, you know what I mean? Maybe even I just need to learn the whole Torah. I don't know. But if you don't start adding all this stuff, you can do all that. But if you don't start adding all this stuff, yeah, it's like you're just adding knowledge, but you're not really adding the substance of it and applying it. Yeah, that's the wisdom part. Yeah, I mean, because people could teach all day and all night, but if there's no wisdom infused into it, it's like just information.